This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. In breaking news, leading scientists worldwide are conducting experiments to determine if Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. However, it appears the study was inconclusive, as the scientists couldn't help but eat all the Reese's. Because when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's. Find Reese's now at a store near you.
This is Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Transforming the lives of impoverished Wacoans has been the driving passion of Dr. Jimmy Dorrell. He embodies the call to put hands and feet to the gospel of Jesus Christ, truly walking and living by the words he speaks and believes. And it is my great honor to call Jimmy Dorrell a friend and to welcome him to Central Texas Living, the podcast.
It is great to see you again and be here on this show. I was so excited to see that it's still going.
Oh, yeah. You're retired.
Yes.
So, and I'm retired. Semi-retired. Both of us.
Yes.
So life is good.
Yes, very good. We have the plan now to. Janet's still working, and so we do work around her hours a little bit. But I can take off of the week and go see the grandkids in Galveston, or I can go play tennis or table tennis, and we've got a lot of freedom. But at the same time, we've got very important responsibilities that we're a part of.
Okay, well let's go back in time. You and Janet, young, marrieds. Or even before that, I mean, you were a youth minister at Highland Baptist Church in Waco. That's kind of a, North Waco, an impoverished area. What was it that led you to really invest your life? I mean, totally invest your lives in this community?
I'd say three things were mostly pivotal. One was when I came to Baylor, I was your typical kind of Baylor kid, but I became the youth director. And I grew up in that world that was very segregated by black and whites, and so Waco was still in that, and I was struggling with it because I knew it wasn't right, and yet as I saw the poverty in Waco, Waco's poverty rate still is way above most. Most people have 13.3%. Waco's is 28.7%. And so I knew that was there, but I was out working with the kids, and then had a call one day from Dewey Pinckney. Pinckney was
I remember, yeah.
Pinckney was pastor of a church in No Man's Land, and most people had never heard of No Man's Land. It was this little pocket of poverty between Waco and Belmead that nobody wanted. The poverty was so overwhelming. And
there was crime there. I remember reporting a lot of stories from No Man's Land.
Yeah, there was no police over there, and the infrastructure was bad. I remember Pinckney was also head of the NAACP and pastored St. Mary's Baptist Church. As a white kid, I didn't know you could have a St. Mary's Baptist Church. And so I remember walking around with him that day and seeing, there was a house in particular, all of them were in bad shape, but this particular one was leaning, tree growing through the front porch. And I said, "Can I look in?" He said, "Yeah." And I pushed the door open, and a man screamed who was living in there, no utilities. Rats and roaches ran everywhere as soon as I opened the door. And he screamed because he couldn't see me because he was also blind.
Oh, my goodness.
And I thought, here I am 2 miles from Baylor, living in a city that doesn't even know this kind of poverty exists. And it was very traumatizing in a good way. And I began to struggle deeply about my own racism and past cultural racism especially. And then finished up youth directing. We went over there, by the way, for years. And then became the recreation director at the old state home. And the state home was transformative. It was a hard place. These were kids taken away from their parents because of child abuse and neglect. And I remember first day on the job trying to find the gym. I was supposed to open it up and couldn't find it. Stopped to talk to a house parent who was getting onto this 6-year-old kid named Moki. And Moki turned and cussed me out. And I thought, how can it be that a kid that young not only knows the words, but would say them to a person he didn't even know? And I'll remember how hard that first week was. I mean, these are kids that had been, again, abused and neglected and exploited, and so they weren't really excited that an adult was there to open the gym. But it was hard. I stopped fights, and I got in Okay, and I remember having this long talk with God that Friday night after that first week of work and trying to remind God how important I was, that I had a Sunday school pen and I had been a youth director all these years, and didn't seem to impact him because I kept hearing, go back and love those kids. And so I went back the next Monday. Kids were still the same, but spent the next 3 years learning to love kids who externally could not love themselves because of all the abuse and neglect. And then fast forward, went to seminary, worked inner city while I went to seminary, but then went to work in Houston after that. And Janet and I, after 3 or 4 years working in a middle-class neighborhood in Houston, knew we'd been called to the poor.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, you know what, we got to do this. We had a 1-year-old child, sold our house there in Houston, made enough money to buy tickets around the world, and Pan Am was still flying back then, had these round-the-world tickets. And so we put our kid on our back and for the next 6 months traveled the world. And didn't have an itinerary and went to Europe. Of course, the wall was still up, and we smuggled Bibles in on the the block on the eastern side, and we
kind of dangerous work.
Yeah, but it wasn't just that was just one visit, but went all around the world, worked in Nepal for a little while in different places, and ended up in India. Got to meet Mother Teresa.
I wanted to talk to you about that. I had read this part of your story, and I think a lot of people may not realize that you had that.
Yeah, it was
tremendous privilege to meet her.
Went to Calcutta at the end of our trip, and we went over to find her in the red light district area where they worked, and there was a place called Kalighat. It was a home for the dying, a place where the Sisters of Charity would bring in these men and women who were in their last days or hours of life, and they had 100 beds, and if that night 10 people died, they'd go to the train stations the next day and get the beggars that were almost dead and bring them back. So we washed clothes and did different things, and we worked in the leper slums with her a little bit. There was a pretty overwhelming reality there. And we were, really about 4.5, 5 months by then. We just were overwhelmed, again, with a child, and thought, what are we going to do with our lives? How do we go back today when 21,000 children are dying in our world from hunger-related causes? I can't just act like it's not going to be there when I go back to middle-class America. So when we got back, we decided that we would live in a mixed income or mostly poor neighborhood, to be honest. And so Waco, like most cities, had isolated around the racial issues. Mostly the old North Waco area had been a middle-class white neighborhood exclusively in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And then as the blacks who began to move across the river in the 60s, the white flight happened to the suburbs, and the business community went with them. And so that old area of North Waco, or where Mission Waco really is, there on 15th and Concord, had flipped as well. So what used to be the old Texas Theater now had become the Capri Porno Theater.
Oh, yeah.
There were bars all over the place, the Martha Jane's liquor store, all kinds of tough issues there. Crime was high. And we bought a house about 6 blocks down the street. I bought a very large house, 4,000 square foot house for only $12,000.
Something kind of a fixer-upper.
It was more than a fixer-upper. It was rats and roaches. There was a lady that would live in it, but these slumlords would buy these old houses and cram people in them. And one place had two mentally ill guys from the VA. The other upstairs, a kid had trashed out the place. And then this one lady had 40 cats in a one-bedroom apartment. And so we bought the house. My father-in-law, by the way, was not excited about our trip nor where we bought the house. And I don't blame him. He spent his whole life trying to raise enough money so his child could go to Baylor. And so we understood all that. But basically, we became friends with the neighborhood. We didn't go down to fix people. I had another job. I was a grant writer for Campfire back then. And at the same time, we knew that the best way is not to go over with an agenda, but just build friendships. And Janet's excellent at that. And so we knew everybody in the neighborhood within the year and built a basketball court at my house. I have a full court at my house. Kids began to come play. And then we made it into the full court the second year. And Mama came with them, and we started a mama's group. We started children and teen groups. And Mission Waco basically grew up in a normal, organic way, just next thing. And so the mamas would say to Janet, hey, my husband needs a job. And so we would create a job training. This is, by the way, all before Google. So we didn't know what we were doing. And then they'd say, my uncle is on crack. Can you help him? And no money. And so we figured out a way to have a residential treatment for the men. It's still going on today. Manor House is one of our favorite places. We see more transformation there than probably any other program we've done. And everything that kept going. And as well, we started redoing the buildings. The old theater in that area had been shut down by the city for 4 years. And we finally had enough courage to go down to this tough neighborhood corner and asked the owner, would he make us a deal? And he said, no, here. And he signed the deed and handed it to us. So we all of a sudden, we had 5 buildings tagged by the city sitting in water. And I thought, what have we done? We have a saying, there's a real fine line between faith and stupid. And we thought, well, this may be on the stupid side. But that became now what is Jubilee Center and the theater.
Been there to shows,
all those, So it was just been so fun. So once we began to work and we get neighborhood people to help us, and so through the years, the work of Mission Waco just kept expanding, and today there's about 80 staff and 16 programs and homeless shelters and clinics and all that stuff. But it has just been so fun to see kids that were playing on my basketball court at 5 years old, now at 35, work for Mission Waco. You know, we've had this transformation of neighborhood, and it's a very blended neighborhood now, black, white, brown. And one of our joys lately has been to take that old liquor store and redo it into an economic store. And we have Helados Aztecas, the Mexican ice cream place there that has got a crowd every night. And now he's just rented the next 2 buildings in the same place that we renovated for other things. So, you know, I'm old enough to watch the transformation, and it's a great place to be, and we still connect to the world, and we still do some things. So I'm free now just to kind of enjoy it than to have to get up and realize how much I had to do.
Well, what you described is what you believe, that if the poor and the marginalized are empowered, the whole city truly prospers. And what we've seen, talk about flipping. It's flip it back to an area you want to go to. You want to go to the cafe. You know, these are places that folks would never even drive through.
And we have a strong mixed income neighborhood. We have people from Woodward come and have coffee and breakfast on Saturday mornings packed to the walls. And, you know, it's just been fun, particularly the grocery store. Just take a second, if you don't mind. One of our biggest issues in our neighborhood was after the old Safeway closed up years ago, and it became a convenience store. Convenience stores typically are predatory. They sell day-old bread for more than fresh bread, and the people had to walk 2.2 miles to the closest store, OHEB on North 19th, and so they kept saying for years, please help us find a place to buy affordable and healthy food. We're tired of buying the junk food or walking 2.5 miles. And so we heard that for years, and because we worked from out, so we tried to buy that old convenience store. He wouldn't sell for years, and finally the roof caved in on part of the one end and called me and said, let's make a deal. And
got to get in just the right shape for you.
And so we worked that out, and then the first thing we did is what we do. We brought the neighborhood together. And so 65 neighborhood folks showed up, and we sat there in that old raggedy store and talked for 2 hours about what they wished it was. And they affirmed by vote. There were 12 issues on the table. They voted, and 77% wanted a grocery store that would be healthy and affordable. So grocery stores don't stay in inner cities. It's a huge problem. That's why we call them food deserts, and they're all over. It's the number one problem the Department of Agriculture has now said, because people can't get to the stores. They have to walk or ride buses to get to grocery stores. They don't have much money, and so we said we were with you. We want to do this. But I was speaking at a big church in Dallas the next week and told them what we'd done. Thought, I don't know if we can do this because profit margin's so small. We don't want to take Mission Waco down by trying to do this project. 2 guys walked up. One had been working for Kroger's for 40 years and had just retired. A friend of his builds all the Kroger's in North Dallas, and said, hey, can we come down and meet with you and see if we can help? Wow. Heck yeah, we can. And so they came, and we ended up putting a team together. We called them the Dream Team, and we met for about 6 months about what it would take, how much money we'd have to raise, how much. And this community got in there. By the blessings of God, we had a good relationship in the community. The newspaper was very kind to us, and we were able to tell the story of what a food desert was, and raised about $700,000, and then we had to gut it and put all the stuff in, and we did that, and people started showing up, and today actually next week we'll celebrate 4 years.
Has it been 4 years?
It has, and
that's great.
And by the way, the community is supposed to shop there too. Most of the neighborhood spend about $9 when they come, but we need $50 people, and so by research, if a person will go 1 out of 16 times instead of the big store where they go to over to the grocery store, that means they'll spend $50 or $100. That keeps us alive because the margins are so small. But we've had people from Houston City Council, from Dallas, from Fort Worth, from Austin come to study our store because they're trying to do the same in their city, because there's just not stores in urban centers anymore. So that's why we do what we do. That's why we talk about how does a community empower the poor and be a part of it. So it's not just giving money. It's shopping in a grocery store is a blessing to us.
This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. In breaking news, leading scientists worldwide are conducting experiments to determine if Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. However, it appears the study was inconclusive, as the scientists couldn't help but eat all the Reese's. Because when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's. Find Reese's now at a store near you.
These missions and ministries that have kind of sprouted up organically. You also, speaking of sprouting, growing food.
Yeah.
How did that all come about, other than you need produce for your Jubilee Market?
Urban REAP is our, REAP stands for Renewable Energy and Agriculture Project, is next door to the grocery store, and we sell basil, and we grow, aquaponics is a little different than hydroponics, so we grow everything in the water. Janet and I had worked in Haiti and lived over there for several months, and we'd seen the devastation of all kind of environmental concerns that just the kids were getting sick. And so I did a master's degree in environmental studies. Janet did too. One of my sons did too. So we had this bent toward how do we use this for what we call creation care? How do we, as Christians, become better stewards of God's good earth? Because we're quite honestly, the research shows we're not any better than the non-Christians, and so we thought that's just right. We've got to do that. So I'd always wanted to do something. We didn't think it would happen, but while we were finishing up the grocery store, there was a grant that came through, and I wrote to Green Mountain Energy this grant asking for the aquaponics greenhouse that I'd seen in Indiana, and they wrote back a few weeks or months later and said, "We love your idea, but we want you to ask for more." Well, I've been writing grants a long time. Nobody's ever asked me to
make it bigger.
Make it bigger. And so I went to find some environmental friends, and we worked on it and ended up putting in the aquaponics system. We have 36 panels of solar. We have rainwater catchment in there. And we also have a composter that came out of China that will do 167 pounds of organic food that we throw in the garbage every day into a beautiful compost in 24 hours. It's amazing. So the Asian culture has been way ahead of us. I mean, that's not surprising to some people, but we're still throwing it in the dump and in landfills. And so we have now a way to teach creation care. We have children and groups that come through all the time. We're open most every day, and have a program director who really understands this stuff. So we're training people how to be better stewards and how to do environmentally friendly things that help our earth and help sustain life.
You're a prolific writer too, written several books. Commonwealth is the newest one, out just a couple of months, right?
Yeah, just a few weeks.
Let's talk about this transformation through Christian community development. And this sort of dovetails in a way to an announcement that's very recent about a new program through Truett.
Yeah.
That folks can do. Let's talk about all that.
All right. Well, first of all, the model that we'd use was called Christian Community Development. For a lot of people, those are just words, but there really is a principles and ways of doing things like incarnational, being able to empower poor. We ran into a group 5 years after we moved into our urban center in our house that was called CCDA, Christian Community Development Association. And we went to a conference in Chicago and found that these were our best friends. They did the same thing we did. Their kids went to urban schools. They were fun, but they cared deeply for their neighborhood people. And so we learned a lot from them, shared ideas through the years, got on the board of directors. And so we have used the principles of Christian community development for all these years. The programs we do, the programs like the grocery store and the toy store and things like women's programs are all done with that model, and it just changes the way people look at things. So, I mean, again, we're in that time of year where people want to take turkeys and toys to poor kids. That's not wrong. We love the compassion people have, but sometimes they never think about how does it feel to be the father when you show up on their porch And the father thinks, I can't take care of my own kids, and now I have to kind of humble myself and appreciate. So we have ways like our toy store where people can be involved in their own kids' lives. So that model became deep in us. And so the story that you are talking about in the book, Commonwealth means we're all blessed differently. Some of us have money. Some of us have had the nice neighborhood and all the privilege. And some of our kids have had everything they ever wanted. And there's a whole bunch of kids on the other side of town who, didn't eat today and who struggle. And so I know both worlds. I've lived in both worlds. And so the privilege I have is that I can bring something together on these two groups. We do another side of Waco tour where we teach middle-class people how to see the whole city, not just their city. And through that, we learned not only the principles, but some ways of telling our story. And this book is certainly personal, but it is also transformative about how you do things. The principles by which you help other people has got to be done in ways that empower, not just relief agencies. And fortunately, there's books like When Helping Hurts and other books out there today that have really helped churches understand that just giving handouts doesn't do much change. And so we understand that, and we can help churches and other people get that. And then as a part of that, there's biblical theology behind it. There's the way Jesus dealt with people, and the way that, the irony of the story, the dichotomy between here's the rich young ruler who did everything right and was wealthy, and Jesus says, go and give it away, and he can't do it. He sadly walks off. And then there's the tax collector that he grabs, the short guy named Zacchaeus, and he goes to his home, and Zacchaeus is transformed and gives half his money away. There's this reality that sometimes the way we look at spiritual things is not the way the kingdom does, that it is losing your life. It is the joy of generosity, the joy of what we get to do. So life is fun for us. I don't envy the rich on the other side of town. I wish they could understand. We have this weekend called the Poverty Simulation.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because you had thousands of people go through this.
Yes, yeah, we've had 25,000 people go through this.
My goodness.
People come from all over America to Mission Waco to be poor from Friday night through Sunday afternoon. They pay $75 to be poor. We like that too. And
we got to cover costs.
That's right. And so we don't tell folks what they're going to come to. All that's on our website at Mission Waco. But these groups come in, and from 8th grade on up, we've had a 96-year-old go through it as well. They spend one weekend not only feeling poverty, but understanding it more. And so it's been a transformative weekend. The classes we do at Baylor, they still go through that as part of the community engagement classes we do. And so all these principles and the theology and the practitioner stuff that we do are in the book, and that's really why I wrote it. I wrote a book earlier called Trolls and Truth. We call ourselves Trolls Under the Bridge. Trolls is about Church Under the Bridge and the way we do that, similar model. But what I've learned about God from the poor, not for the poor, but from the poor. And then this book is about Mission Waco and the theology behind that. And because I am privileged to get to teach community development classes at Truett, and also we have other ways that we teach. I teach a couple of classes in other places. We're able to do this intensive academic thing, but then Truett, trying to be, on the cutting edge, says, you know what, everybody's not academically oriented. They don't need to go 3 years to a seminary to get some stuff. And so they created a certificate program a few years ago that has exploded. And so people now that don't have, maybe they have a high school diploma or whatever they have, and they want to learn more about theology and about church history, et cetera. There's that piece, but then there's the specialization. So I am now teaching a new class on Christian community development, and you can get a 4-class group in just about community development, or you can also add the other 6 classes that give you some deeper understanding of biblical theology. So it's just a great model, and you don't get a Master of Divinity at the end, you just get a certificate. But it is, I've got 2 friends, 2 of our staff actually, that are finishing it up, and it has been life-changing for them.
And they work, they work there. It's not like they don't know what you do and what it's about.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of people are doing work, they're just doing it in ways that they could do better if they understood some of the principles behind community development.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Church Under the Bridge. There is so much that you've done and how you've blessed this community. Church Under the Bridge, how did all that start, and what's the status of it? I know you're undergoing renovations right now.
We, Janet and I were eating breakfast one Friday morning at Taco Cabana across from the interstate near Baylor. And we looked over and saw the homeless folks sleeping under the bridge and thought, you know what, let's just go over and invite them over here to eat. I'll pay for breakfast if they'll give me their story and tell me why they aren't working or what kind of issues at home they had that made them end up on the streets. And so they came, and we had this great 2-hour conversation, and they said, hey, let's do it next week. And, of course, I bought breakfast, so that wasn't a hard one. But they came, and they brought more, and we had a great conversation each time. The third time, breakfast cost about $250, and I can't
Word
do this.
was out.
Yeah. And so we created the Friday morning breakfast out of that we've still done for 25 years.
Yeah.
But the other side of it was they said to me, hey, why don't you come over under our bridge where we live and do a Bible study? So Janet sings and plays the guitar. So the next Sunday we went over and put up chairs, and 5 folks sat in those chairs, and we had this little Bible study, and Janet sang, and it was so fun. It's so loud. The overhead traffic's just a mess, and big old 18-wheelers. And they said, come back next week. And so we came, and then the third week. And so this little ragtag bunch of folks began to grow, and all of a sudden community people would begin to show up, and then a Baylor kid or two would walk across the street. And before COVID, we were running almost 300 people, blacks and whites and browns and rich people and poor people, Baylor kids sitting down next to folks that had just gotten out of county jail or had schizophrenia. And this crazy mix of people that for us is what the kingdom of God is about. That thy kingdom come, thy will be done where? Not just in heaven, but on earth. That we're supposed to be practicing the kingdom now. So learning how to love people across differences, whether it be racial or economic or mental. And so it was so fun, and just we're not normal. I mean, if you're looking for a traditional church, do not come to our church.
You don't necessarily have a children's.
No. Well, we actually have a children.
I'm sure you have children that come.
We have a trailer that they go into.
Okay, so somebody takes care. Well, good, all right, but not necessarily a choir and the choir robes and the orchestra.
No. We give them clothes when they get there. So there's it's this real mix of. In fact, we have one of our primary band members is a mentally ill man who plays like he plays a guitar, but he doesn't really. And he's been doing that for 10 years now, and out of a mental health home. And you just see, we're not slick. We're just who we are. And so there's a genuineness about it. There's a spiritual vulnerability. Like, we got folks who've done some tough stuff, but then I was the Pharisee. And when Jesus got into people's face, he got into people's face like me more than he got into the face of the adulterer. And so we have to keep reminding ourselves that we're all in the same place. And don't call me Reverend, I'm just Jimmy. And we live in this common world now for 28 years. So about a year and a half ago, we got word from TxDOT that they were going to build the bridge and do the interstate 6 miles through Waco, and that we would have to move for a time. And so we began to look around and weren't sure what we're going to do. Somebody wrote an article with Trib and said, homeless church is about to be homeless. And so we thought, okay, what are we going to do? And sure enough, Chip and Joanna called and said, hey, we're closed on Sundays. You're 5 blocks away. Come over here. And so we moved over to the silos. It was a really fun day. It was a cold day in March. And we got a little junior high band from, I think, Woodway. And we played When the Saints Go Marching In from one place to the next, and just had such a fun first day. And so we've been there now every week, except for 5 weeks during the COVID crisis, where we fed the homeless and poor on the streets.
You never stopped.
Never stopped. And we've never had anybody get sick because of it either. I mean, that's the irony of it all, that I know, and I'm not downplaying the importance of we mask, we distance, we do all the stuff the guidelines say to do, but by the grace of God, we've not had anybody get sick. And we did ask our folks who had secondary issues not to come. So we have people that still have not come back. So probably about half what we were. And of course, we have a lot of visitors that want to come in and see what it's like and experience it. But there's a genuineness about it, a realness about it. And so half our budget we give away. We have a little bitty budget, but we give $750 a month to Mexico City, to the orphans and to the homeless down there that we work with, and we give local nonprofits money. So it's not just the mix of people, it's our theology and our methodology about how we work that I think has become so fun for me, and we just enjoy life together. So
you'll be going back under the bridge
at
some point, huh?
You, the taxpayers, are paying for my new $341 million bridge sanctuary that's supposed to be ready in about another 18 months. Hopefully it'll be then or sooner. But we laugh all the time. We go over and take pictures of it to show our church body what's going on over there, and try to get them to get excited about it. So, but yes, we will definitely go back. It's going to look nicer and be nicer than it was when we left. So we're excited about it.
That's good.
And we're not paying a dime for it.
Isn't it amazing? That's great. It's all being provided. I know over the years, I mean, you say 27,000 people have come through your poverty simulation. I know there have been remarkable folks who've had dramatic changes in their lives. Are there any that just come to mind that you want to tell them about?
Yeah, one of them you may know now. You wouldn't have known until a few months ago. Stevie Walker Webb. I don't know if you saw a newspaper story. Stevie was an 11-year-old kid that came to Mission Waco from the neighborhood, African-American kid, had mostly poverty, and came over to our children's program, then got in our youth program. Just so talented, such a talented kid. And he stayed with us through the years, and then at the end of his senior year, called me and said, "Can you help me go to college?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we'll do the best we can. We've got a little small amount of money that somebody gave us to help students like you, and you get the Pell Grants and all the rest, and we'll see what we can do." And sure enough, we got him into North Texas, and he did a degree in sociology and fine arts. And called me at the end of his fourth year, said, "Can you help me get my master's of fine arts? I'm loving all this stuff with the theater." And I said, "No, we can't do that, but I will hire you to be our first theater director." So Stevie came back to the Jubilee Theater. We couldn't afford it until then, anybody to be the director. He came in and stayed for 3 years. It was the most amazing transformation. This kid had written plays. We would do Broadway plays like Fences with neighborhood folks. I mean, just amazing. People came from all over Waco to see it. And then at the end of those 3 years, he called and he said, "I just got my dream. The best drama school in the nation has offered me a scholarship." It said there were 1,200 people that applied for 3 scholarships, and I got one of those 3. Wow. So here's a neighborhood kid that nobody sees, just an average kid that's in every neighborhood in America. And we had the privilege to be a part of that. He went and got his Master's of Fine Arts and is now directing plays on Broadway and off-Broadway. I mean, he's won an Obie Award already. But the story is that some of you may know him by is that his brother has serious schizophrenia. And so he had episodes. We knew his brother. They call him Wade. We know him through our programs. He was in there too. But Stevie was off in New York. His mom and dad were dealing with this child that had these severe outbreaks. And anytime he did, he was kind of uncontrollable, and the police would come if they'd call him to get help. But the last time that they called, he was so out of control they couldn't get him sedated enough, and so they put him in county jail. Well, if you're not aware of what's going on in America, unfortunately, particularly in Texas, we're number 49 out of 50 states in terms of really having funds to help the mentally ill. And so what happens in more cases than not, they have no place to take them. They put them in county jail, and they live in isolation in a segregated unit, so 23 hours a day with nobody around, 1 hour of freedom. And so Stevie's heart was breaking. His mom and dad were, of course, broken and didn't know what to do. And so finally he was able, because of COVID, to come home for a while. And, of course, it was already overwhelmed by it. His brother stayed in county jail for about 154 days. And he said, "I can't just do this." So he's so creative. So he went out to the county jail with their permission and built a prison cell, a little fenced-in cell just on the outside fence of the local county jail. And then he put on a uniform, a little bed that they sleep in. And, of course, he had friends in high places now in New York. So they came down, and for 24 hours he lived in the cell, Facebook Live, where people could watch him and the reality of what his brother's living 150-something days. He now is doing just 1 day, but people began to donate to help his brother get into some care. His brother was still in another several weeks, and then got into the Austin State Hospital, I think, for a while, but it won't last long there. And again, there's just so few places for them. But Stevie is one of those kids that not only has done well in terms of his giftedness and his talent, but his justice. He understands that we, particularly those blessed by God, we need to fight for things that are right, and he does that in exceptional ways.
What a story. What a story. Commonwealth, Transformation Through Christian Community Development. This book is available how?
Amazon is the easiest way. Baylor Press wrote it, published it, and there is a discount. If you want to get you a code, I'll give you a 20% discount. And then if you can't do any other way, you go to the Baylor bookstore because they have copies now.
Book be great for book clubs, whatever.
Yeah.
Also, the new program at Baylor, if you're interested in the Truett Seminary certificate on community development.
Just go to the website and put Truett Seminary Certificate Program, and it'll come up among probably 6 or 7 different courses now that they do that way.
Well, Jimmy, I like to end these visits with a questionnaire similar to the one the late, great James Lipton would do on Inside the Actors Studio. You're shaking your head. You've heard, say, what's your favorite word?
Empowerment. It just fits who we are and what we believe that all of God's creation was created to be. Imago Dei is the fancy word, made in the image of God, that we are to move toward our full potential by being empowered.
Your least favorite word?
Pity. That we feel sorry for people because we think that's what compassion is. The word compassion really means to enter the pain. It means 2 Latin words. I move out of my place of safety and security, my nice home, my security, all these things that I've built around myself, and I get up and I enter the pain. And when you move out of your circle into the pain of the real world, it begins to transform you in a good way.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder. This has been a Rogue Media Network production.